We're back. Legendary Sickos, Legendary Upside, Pat Green, Spike Week, Erik Bindfor. The playoffs are here with Best Ball. We're going to get into all the goodness. Our good teams, our bad teams, our good takes, our bad takes, what we're excited for this weekend, and everything there in between. Let's do it.
3, 2, 1, liftoff.
Pat, it's been a little while since we've been able to record one of these, but we had a lot of fun with them over the summer. The people seemed to enjoy. I'll toot our own horn. Might as well off the top. People love to hear you brag on yourself, especially within the first minute of the podcast. But I just this week
really love it.
I just got a message from someone this week that specifically highlighted one of our episodes that we did this summer. That was like, I just want to say thank you guys so much. You changed how I viewed best ball. It improved my play. I advanced so many more teams. And I also feel like they're so much more live in the playoffs. And so, it's always nice, of course.
How would that be? He advanced teams, so you must have had to sacrifice the playoffs to do that.
I'm not sure if you're aware you have to pick one or the other. Life is
you
binary.
Have to pick one, so how do you do both?
There is no such thing. There's no such thing as nuance in this world.
This guy didn't get it at all.
Yeah.
You don't advance the teams. You only
talked for like
playoffs.
4 hours an episode, and he clearly wasn't listening if he didn't understand that you have to pick week 17 or advancing. But the best ball playoffs are here, so a great time for us to come back together, and we're just going to chop it up. We don't have necessarily a set, subject like we maybe did over the summer.
Yeah, we were very we always stuck exactly to subject, and really just tight shows all summer long for you, if you remember.
Super organized, super on track. They were great. Certainly no comments about marathon episodes or me saying to wrap 45 minutes in and then us going for 2.5 hours. But yeah, so if this is your first time listening, maybe go back and listen to some of the episodes, or just go see how long they were, because you'll get the reference from that. But first, I just want to talk about, like, super high level, how you're feeling heading into the best ball playoffs, because I think it's one of those things that I try to talk about like quite a bit at this point in time and throughout the course of the playoffs, because, it's not like people technically really care about how I feel, but I feel like there's so much out, right? It's like screenshot DFS, where it's so easy to see, oh, like this guy's got a 25% advance rate. This guy drafted, 50% Raheem Mostert. This guy like really crushed it. All these people. And it looks like, this game is so easy. But really, you get to this point in the season, and like for me, I actually have a below average advance rate, despite a couple of really massive hits on player takes. But I have a lot of huge misses, and I did take some bigger stands. And I like to just be like, here's how I'm feeling. Like I here's some teams I'm interested in. Here's some things I'm excited about. Here's some things I wish I changed, right? And just like general thoughts on how you're, like, the playoffs are here now. How are you feeling about how everything how you handled everything over the summer, and then like how your teams are sitting right now?
Yeah, I think there's some spots that I feel really good about the way I drafted. There's some spots where I didn't make the right calls. I think there's some team level things that, like, I didn't hammer the Dolphins running backs as much as some other drafters did. I know Pete Overzet was really hammering that, and I was in on the general idea of like hammering these uncertain backfields, but I got like a little bit overly cautious with the potential for them to trade for like Jonathan Taylor or bring in someone else, because I was like, really, they're going to stick with Mostert? I'm overweight Achane. I at least played it right there, but I just don't have enough Mostert, and I'm definitely kicking myself for that one. It's like Mike McDaniel's uncertain backfield. You weren't overweight, like that's just a leak. So that one is like a more micro. Like, I don't want to do that kind of crap again. I was in on Kyron, and that was one that I signaled ahead of time. I was basically going to be looking for the Kyron, and then I was like, all right, Kyron's the Kyron, and I was in on him. That was nice. I probably could have gone harder, but that. And when I say I was looking for the Kyron, I wrote an article talking about late round picks in best ball, and I was saying, like, look. Now, it's kind of funny because some of the guys that I was saying I wasn't really going to be high on are looking like pretty sweet picks right now, like Ty Chandler, Chase Brown. Like, if you just kind of did throw the dart throws early in the offseason, you probably landed on some good guys that you're happy to have. They didn't help you advance really, but you're psyched to have them in the playoffs.
Yep.
But Kyron obviously was the guy who's, I'm literally going to name the walkthrough Kyron Williams week. So he's set up really well for the playoffs, but he's also been a huge advance rate guy. And we got the information that the Rams valued him as their clear number 2. He was behind a starter that was extremely, he literally quit on the team last year before they traded him this year. So just kind of an obvious spot for like to bet on kind of the depth chart stuff. We had a lot of certainty there, and it kind of kept. And my point was, we're going to get information, and then we want to like hammer that information. So that's one thing where I feel like I played it right. I probably should have been even bolder to be like, this is the spot where I feel super confident. I know you drafted a ton of Kyron because you were drafting like in the very last days nonstop. I was moving from Brooklyn to San Diego, so maybe that also hurt my Kyron exposure a little bit because I didn't draft as much as I would have liked in those final days. Mm-hmm. I think one of the biggest misses for me from a macro standpoint was misidentifying where the break was at wide receiver. Right, there was a tier break at wide receiver right after Traylon Burks and Rashad Bateman. It was before that. It was before that.
We called it the Bateman line on like every episode of the whole summer. The wide receiver was the Bateman line. Little did we know
it was way before that.
Bateman was down in that crevice. You should have stopped before you found the bottom of that.
Stop before Bateman, not after him. And then of course you get
the line was don't go to that line.
Don't go to Bateman.
Not get in before that. Yeah.
Right. But there was like Jacoby Myers was, and I was high on Jacoby Myers. Like he's one high on my advancing teams as well as in my overall portfolio. And so, he was a guy that I felt like, the profile was actually pretty good. I was making exceptions for Jacoby Myers, but I was still structuring my team to basically like get my wide receiver firepower in before Burks and Bateman were gone. And, obviously firepower is a strong word to use when those are your guys. So that hurt. Marvin Mims never fully breaking out hurt because he was someone I hammered. And I kind of feel like I'm going to do it again. Like if you let me get a Marvin Mims like that, I will hammer him again. I think, maybe Mims isn't as good as we were hoping earlier. Probably not when he was just like setting the world on fire on super small routes. It never developed, but like that is the type of player that I'm going to want to be overweight on because I think the high end outcomes are really high and like this was one of the low end outcomes and it's still like not that painful. So but it's not ideal to have like my highest one of my highest exposure wide receivers be Marvin Mims. But my highest exposure guys in the advancing teams are I think Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel, and I feel like from a macro situation or team level situation, I got the 49ers right, which was big, right? Like getting
huge.
I was out on Lance. I was in on Purdy. I drafted them aggressively. And thank goodness. Because to me, like I had 26 teams advance out of Best Ball Mania. So that's like basically dead even with expectations. I had overall, I think I was a little under expectations when looking at my entire portfolio. And I kind of feel like you. I mean, I nailed some stuff. I also had, I hammered Anthony Richardson. You give me Anthony Richardson again, I will hammer him again. Yep. You give me Breece Hall again, I will hammer him again. I hope his ACL doesn't tear his Achilles. Like Hall was probably kind of a wash, but he should have been someone that's like power in my portfolio and wasn't quite. Give me Jalen Warren again, I will hammer it again. I know people were like, I had a Steelers fan being like, they'll never turn it over to Warren. They're too stubborn. He was basically right. But he's so good that they had to make it at least a split backfield, and Warren hasn't hurt me, and I feel good about having Jalen Warren. But I feel like a lot of my big spots, like some of my hits, didn't quite hit the way I was hoping. I didn't hammer the one that really hit and Kyron enough. I missed Puka. Puka was another guy I should have. That was a leak too. Rookie wide receiver who the team likes. Shallow depth chart, kind of an Amon-Ra situation again, and I whipped on it. So those are probably the Mostert one and the Puka one are the ones I feel worst about. I like Bateman and Burks' prospect. It sucks they both busted in a way that like made my my overall like team construction's worse. But
Right.
like I'm probably gonna do that again in the next like 3 or 4 years. But the ones that sting the most, I think, are the Puka. Like I missed a rookie breakout in a somewhat obvious spot, and the Mostert where it's like it's Mike McDaniel's running back, and it's a and I had Jeff Wilson and I had Achane, but I was low Mostert, so that was stupid.
Yeah, I think you outlined a lot of how I've been thinking about things in that, like when you're saying, I'd probably do that again, right? I'd probably do Marvin Mims again. I'd probably still do Bateman again. I feel like at this point, and of course, over the winter, heading into spring, summer, when next year's drafts open up, the biggest thing and most difficult thing at the same time is analyzing what you did in drafts, your player takes, your structures, I think it's even more so than just player takes. I think it's like what you talked about with the Bateman line type of thing, understanding your assessment of the market, right? Where massive tier
pool
breaks. Yeah. Understanding the player pool is just as important as, do I think this player is a good pick or not? Probably way more so. But the most difficult part that I'm most focused on is, what was I definitely wrong about from a process perspective and evaluation perspective? What did I just totally get wrong? And I don't mean just like I liked Bateman and he's actually not good, right? Or I liked Treylon Burks and he's actually not good, because that's just it is what it is. You're going to get some player takes wrong. It doesn't change. He played out Treylon Burks specifically. I'm not sold Bateman's awful. I might be sold Treylon Burks is awful.
I almost feel the other way, because I feel like Burks has dealt with some serious injuries and we just don't know. But Bateman has had more of a chance.
What I will say is also probably some recency bias that someone shared in the Spike Week Discord, which there's a link to. I'll also put a link to Pat's Discord in the description of this video. That Bateman has been like a truly elite separator, particularly down the field this year. And it's funny because it jives with, I'm sure just like you watch all the games, in particular watching the guys that you drafted a lot of, right? And you're like, please God, every single game is just like, please God, Bateman one touchdown. Like, I'm not asking for 25 points, dude. I'm asking for 11 or whatever.
11 would be sick.
It would be absolutely
this week, especially would be nice.
Yes, but I'm watching and I'm like, he is getting targeted down the field, and he does seem to be kind of getting behind the defense a little bit. But I'm like, I don't have any, who am I to say? I'm very biased. Like, I'm very biased, obviously, because I want him to score a long touchdown. And some of the data came back and was basically like, he's actually separating down the field amazingly. What he's not doing is obviously connecting on any of those, and he's probably not something we do probably know. And I feel like this about Burks as well. They might not be awful, but they're probably not these down the field guys you can just go throw it up to, right? Which is a very different skill, right? And in particular for Burks, they have one of those guys in DeAndre Hopkins. And so it's like, if I got single coverage on each side, who's Will Levis going to chuck the ball to? Well, Nuke. He's not going to throw it to Burks.
There's also, I think there's an element of this that's, because I know the chart you're referring to, and I had pulled it up, and I actually wrote about this in the walkthrough a few weeks ago, of like, separation is a piece of the puzzle, but I really like ESPN's Open Score, which is available for free, ESPN Analytics /RTM. You can check out all out there. But I think it's really cool because they look at more than just separation. They're able to use the player tracking data to like look at things like they can tell like which direction the defensive back is facing, right? So like they also can tell the speed of the wide receiver versus the speed of the defender. Mm-hmm. So like Hopkins, because like contested catches are not the way we want to be getting there, and like the guys who like we don't want
George
Devontae
Pickens.
Parker. Yeah,
right. George Pickens.
Yeah, so like if you can't get any separation, I actually think Pickens has improved a bit. So I think Parker's kind of the guy, like that's like he cannot get open. Like he's horrible in open score. He gets no separation. If you look at any of those types of metrics, Parker's going to be like dead last in both. Like he's not doing like he's just bodied by the defender correctly. But Hopkins might have the guy next to him, but like he's not usually in position to make a play on the ball the way Hopkins is. So, maybe that means Hopkins, you'd think it would mean he wouldn't age all that gracefully since he can't separate that well, but he's aging pretty gracefully. So I don't know. But but separation isn't everything. And Bateman actually not great in open score. He's not terrible, but he's wide receiver and tight end 60. He's near like Devontae Smith and T. Higgins and Rashee Rice. So he's not bad, but it's just I guess I'm also skeptical that he's like I'm skeptical of those separation numbers telling the whole story because I know they don't tell the whole story on really good wide receivers.
100%. And what I would caveat is that they definitely it is like you said, one piece and a small piece of the puzzle. I always go back to Devontae Adams is the best wide receiver in the NFL because he's the perfect encapsulation of all of this and all of that nuance. Like you said, sometimes guess what? Devontae Adams isn't open, but when he is covered, he's still open because he can do the contested catch. Of course, when him and Rodgers were on the same team, it was much easier because they had a goddamn mind meld and Rodgers the most accurate quarterback of all time.
So fun.
Unbelievable. But he also, you can't press him. Because he's gonna just it doesn't matter who the corner is, right? Jalen Ramsey, pick your favorite corner in the NFL. You can't press him, and he gets separation immediately. He gets separation down the field, and then even when he doesn't, because even the best wide receivers don't always get separation, right? When he doesn't, he's still open because he can do the thing like you mentioned with Hopkins. He's so good at the little body positioning, and frankly, all the best guys. Nuke is very good at this. Mike Evans is very good at this. Good at pushing off. Good at pushing off, gaining leverage without getting called for OPI, right? And so they do all of that. Bateman, to me, is the perfect encapsulation of, like, he feels like MVS to me, where I think what the separation stuff is telling me is down the field. Okay, I think, things maybe just haven't worked out between him and Lamar connection. I mean, it just happened this week. He was wide. He was like 10 yards behind the DB, maybe an exaggeration, 5 yards behind the DB, and Lamar underthrew him. And then he's not good enough to come back and make the play still when the ball is underthrown. That's MVS. He might be able to get behind the defense, but you better throw a good ball. And he still might drop it. But that's like Rashad Bateman. And so that is all us getting into the nuts and bolts, but this is one outcome that happened for Rashad Bateman and that happened for Treylon Burks. It's easy to say, I should have seen it, right? I should have seen it. He wasn't good. He hasn't popped off before, but also in particular with these guys, like you said, we like them as prospects. There is not much target competition in those offenses, right? There was absolutely reason to believe a young player with a good prospect profile had like some production. It wasn't like neither of them, they weren't JJ Arcega-Whiteside or whatever, it's not like they did nothing.
Yeah.
So there was reason to believe in good offenses in the Ravens example, maybe functional offenses in the Titans example, that they could take a step and be good. And I don't really feel bad about those bets. Like you said, we get another second or third year wide receiver in the 8th round next year on a potentially good offense. Like I'm not going to shy away from that because I whiffed on Rashad Bateman, but I also want to take the lessons, like you mentioned, with the Dolphins. And I did the same thing. I'm not completely uncomfortable with my exposure to those guys, but I'm disappointed in myself because it's a situation, right? I didn't draft 0 of them and I'm not underweight really any of those guys, but that's a situation, especially with the way that I play, where I take big stands. I'm very comfortable losing it all, having a low advance rate or whatever. Those are specifically the examples that I should be targeting and I should be hammering all three of them. Like you mentioned, it's uncertain, high upside. I love the Dolphins.
And like our buddy saw it, so it also makes it more disappointing.
It wasn't like I got distracted by somebody who didn't, right? Somebody I really trust who maybe had me thinking something differently. I have no one to blame but myself.
No, I'm that
yeah.
Probably cost my friends more than most.
But you know what I mean? I think the difference between hammering Rashad Bateman and hammering Treylon Burks and missing on the Dolphins backfield are two very different lessons. And I'm trying to make sure I'm taking the right lessons. Like you mentioned the Kyren thing, flipping it to the good. We got plenty of bad because I got plenty of bad things I did over the summer. But the Kyren one was like, I screwed up with the Dolphins thing and I finally learned my lesson. Like this is everything we dreamed about in best ball. You get a guy who was undrafted for most of the summer, completely undrafted. Because of the lack of information, I'm not saying we should have been drafting him in April or May. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying once we got the information that you outlined, right? And we have Cam Akers as the guy in front of him. We have the Rams, who are a fantasy gold mine for running backs, absolute gold mine. And then like you said, we get the information, and it's not just we got information like, oh, maybe this guy's a good pick. No, we got information that this guy was like 10 rounds undervalued. Like maybe a slight exaggeration, but we're taking committee backs in uncertain situations, right? Antonio Gibson, before the show, we were talking about, I'm scrolling my teams for Antonio Gibson. Why was Antonio Gibson a 10th round pick and Kyren a 20th round pick? He
was Kenneth Gainwell, but in the 20th round instead of the 12th.
Right, exactly. And so I processed all of that, like you said, later in the summer. I just so happened to get very lucky that like I had a lot of drafters and DraftKings drafts still to do. So I didn't have a ton on underdog of Kyren, but I said, this is like generational wealth opportunity. Like I don't know that Kyren's going to be anything, but if I didn't adjust for ADP in my rankings, he'd be in like the top 100, and he's going in the last round of drafts. So I basically just took him in every draft on drafters and DraftKings down the stretch. I would reach for him up, up in the whatever. I want to get unique combos. I finally got a little bit of Puka, nowhere near enough, but I did a little bit of Puka at the end. And I was just like, I'm just going to take these Rams like in my last 3 rounds. So if I got to pull Kyren up, give me Puka 2-2 and Kyren at the end, and just who cares about ADP? Because I want to get these guys. And I feel like I did that. That was like the best thing I did all summer. And I processed the whole situation appropriately, and I just hammered it. If Kyren got hurt, guess what? It would be a very bad year for me. Very, very bad. But that's the risks you take when you spot an edge to do it. And I feel comfortable with the way I processed it.
Yeah. And I feel like I nailed the Anthony Richardson thing. Like Anthony Richardson was an awesome pick. He like, I have a big old bag of big board Anthony Richardson, where I was just like, I had like 60-something% of him
in the big board. I mean, absolute home run.
Yeah. Like it didn't work out, but like that goes down in the win column. Like, I mean, because that's, the process over results idea. Like if you're trying to evaluate your own play, like, and you could say like, oh, Anthony Richardson was going to get hurt because he runs. Well, like half the league is out, guys. We lost half the league.
Also,
so
if you look at the list,
I'm not compelled by that.
It's not more runners. I will go to my goddamn grave that whole thing is a myth. Can runners get hurt? Of course.
Of course absolutely. They can. Of course they can.
Of course they can. They're naturally going to take more hits in the open field. But guess what they take less hits of, where it really can be catastrophic when you get hit. When the pocket collapses and you have no ability to get out of there, it gets bad, dude. There are 4 or 5, 6, 300-pound men who are very, very strong, and your own offensive lineman collapsing down on you and falling on top of your legs or hitting you in the head or whatever. Like, if you are able to get out of there, like look at Kyler. Yeah, he blew out his knee in the open field, but he never gets hit, ever, never gets hit, because he has the ability to avoid the rush. So anyway, just a pet peeve of mine. I'm going to my grave with the whole myth of the running quarterbacks getting hurt more.
Yeah. But, and I think on the Bateman one, I feel kind of 2 minds about it. One, like if the Burks one's cleaner, because Burks sprained his knee, and I stopped drafting him as much for sure, but I still drafted him some, and I probably should have just stopped drafting him. I think that's one of the ones, and Bateman, kind of had the foot thing, and I was like, it doesn't seem like a big deal. Like he should be fine, but like he missed an entire training camp with a new offensive coordinator, and I think that clearly didn't help. Maybe he just stinks, and that's enough, but it didn't help. So, I think taking those, it's like, okay, these are already kind of, I wouldn't say long shots, but they're wide receivers that have some red flags. They're not cheap. They're still in the single-digit rounds. They're upside bets, so you're willing to take on some risk, but the risk is starting to pile up. And I think there's a thing where if I like a guy and it's like, hey, here's another added piece of risk, and we're like, yeah, I know he's risky, dude. Shut up. But it's like, no, he's riskier. He's riskier. If that matters that he's riskier than he was before. And I can kind of hand wave that sometimes. So I think I did that with Bateman and Burks. But I also think with Bateman, when I go back and I look and I kind of evaluate the way I played it, the way I screw up the Bateman thing is if I only played it through Bateman. But I have a bunch of Andrews. Okay. Now that didn't work out, but I mean, I feel okay about that. I mean, at one point he looked like one of the best picks you could have made because the second and third round was so gross. I have a bunch of J.K. Dobbins, also a disaster. Feel pretty great about that. I think he was actually an awesome pick. I have Zay Flowers. I'm not like super overweight Zay Flowers, but I didn't fade Zay Flowers, and he's not a prospect I like. So, but I feel okay. Like, okay, you got at least you're willing to like be even with the field on this guy you didn't really like because you liked the Ravens. It's like, I like the Ravens. I'm going to draft Bateman because I like the Ravens and I like the prospect, but I'm also going to mix in this rookie who might pass him. I'm also going to hedge a little bit with Odell Beckham, which I did. Yep. I was kind of one of the guys, when we're doing these best ball breakfast drafts with Pete, like I was more like, if we don't have Bateman, we should take OBJ. I know it's gross, but let's do it. Right? I didn't do that a lot. He was not a target for me, but I wasn't closed-minded to that. So that's where I like review, like, and I feel okay about it. I feel okay. The foot thing, I should have factored that in a little bit more, but I mean, you're not going to be perfect, and and I'll try to be more cognizant of that next year with guys that I like that are nursing injuries and especially in new situations, or with like changing teammates and stuff. I think that's something to be mindful of. But the rest of the way I played it, I made a logical, coherent bet on the Ravens as part of my portfolio this year, and I like that I did that. It didn't work out as well as I would have hoped. A lot of the key pieces got hurt, or it sucked. But I think like when I review that, I'm like, all right, good. That was a good way to play this.
That's exactly how I don't really have that much to add. The Ravens were outside of, I guess, probably Commanders. The Ravens were my biggest bet. Those were easily my two biggest bets from a team perspective. And they're fun. It's funny in that they both panned out similarly, but also very, very different. The Ravens, I feel like, were a huge hit. I think that has proven to be true, despite the fact that their starting running back didn't even play a half of a game. And despite the fact that Mark Andrews missed week 1 and then, broke his ankle or leg or whatever it was later. And like you said, Rashad Bateman was a whiff, but the entire bet was about, I want the Ravens. And like you said, I feel the same. I did the same thing as you with Odell. It made me sick to my stomach because that is not the type of player I like. But I think that is when I go back and look, I say, you have your biases, and it's not even just, I mean, it's definitely a bias by definition, but it doesn't mean it's bad to prefer younger players and to dislike older players.
You kind of, if you're drafting like kind of archetype based, then you sort of are going to be biased against certain players, but that's like kind of the point.
Be willing to understand that archetype preference is not the whole story. And it's not the whole. It can be the whole story in terms of like how you want those guys to look in your portfolio. I did not want Odell to be higher owned than all the other Ravens. Like that would have been a mistake in my opinion. But I didn't want to be like, nope, I'm going to draft every single Raven except Odell Beckham. Like
that's how I felt too. Yeah,
I think that would have been the mistake. And so, like you said, same thing. It looks bad now when J.K. Dobbins is on all these advancing teams. It feels bad, but I would do it again. Same thing. Like I believed firmly that J.K. Dobbins was the best pick, like pound for pound, point per dollar, whatever the hell you want to metric you would like to use in all of the drafts, and he kept getting cheaper. Like if the market had agreed with me and he skyrocketed up, maybe my exposure would be a little lighter, but he kept getting cheaper. And so I was just like, I'm going to take this opportunity to take this stand, and it didn't work. And I'm okay with that. Right. And that's one that I'm okay with, but it's finding the ones, it's making sure that you process that like we just talked about, and you're like, I'm okay with what I did there. It sucks I lost money, right? But if in DFS, if you play a guy who gets hurt, you're very willing to just be like, I ran bad, I got unlucky. But kind of when it happens, or even in the Bateman example, when he doesn't pan out and maybe he stinks, in best ball, I find they always want to draw a conclusion to make a different decision in the future. And a lot of the times, actually, it's like, he was still a fine bet. Maybe should you have tweaked it a little bit? That's great. That's a great analysis that you gave on like, okay, he maybe became a lot riskier. How do I put that into my portfolio? But like, that doesn't change. Should you have drafted a bunch of him in May in the 9th or 10th round, And so, but that's the thing that I'm trying to assess the most right now. And it's hard. I mean, it's hard because you want to beat yourself up for your mistakes, but also you want to hold on to, I think I was right about this, when really, you got to find that middle ground where the answers are.
Yeah, for sure. And I think you do want to draw conclusions. I think there's something about it being a season that we live through, it's so long. It's like half a year of our lives instead of 1 week. And so things become like we start to feel like this was destined. Things start to feel destined in a way that they don't in a single week slate. Partly because we don't even like what happened in week 3. Do you remember? I don't. Like, what was the week 3 thing that like you felt that way for like 2 days of like, I should have known this, but then
Cole Turner got to play in week 3. I only know that because I have been scouring my useless Cole Turner teams. But week 3, Logan Thomas is out. There you go. There's my week 3 memory. That's
how did you guys not know? How did you not know that Cole Turner was going to play? Imagine not knowing that
Cole Turner had a 25% target share in week 3.
You donkeys. So like we don't live with that. We wipe it from our brains and we move on. But with the season long stuff, you sit with it. Then it happens, like it builds on itself and builds on itself. And it's like, well, obviously this was the way this had to play out. And I think especially with some of the injury stuff, with some of like the banged up guys who kind of have disappointing seasons, guys playing through injuries, like that kind of stuff. Like this is not the way it had to go. Guys with quarterbacks who got hurt that tanked their seasons. Like this was not set in stone. We live in one version of what could have happened. So I think, it's just, I think our brains are more likely to sort of play tricks on us in the way of feeling like it had to happen this way than I mean, unless you're just like a mega take lock type of person. But I think in general, it's okay to be like, yeah, I'm going to play the Marvin Mims again. Like the Marvin Mims card is one I will be playing. Like that's one I like. It didn't really work. But like the Broncos were functional, it was like a cheap bet on the Broncos bouncing back a little bit. That more or less worked out. Judy I didn't like Judy as a pick. I got kind of bullied onto him a little bit because he was like generally liked by drafters that I respect. And that didn't work, but that didn't really mean Marvin Mims broke out either. So that's disappointing. But if the Mims bet's like sort of a bet against Sutton and Judy, who I wasn't super high on, betting on the Broncos to bounce back a little bit under Sean Payton, like check. Like he's not quite as good or not trusted right now.
Tim Patrick got hurt. The runway was there.
Yeah, it was there. It just didn't really hit. But like, I'm gonna make it again, dude. I'm gonna make that bet again. So yeah, I think some of those it's fine. It's good. It's probably good to have spots like that. You definitely don't want to like conflate things lessons learned with like, no, everything I did was fine. but
that's the thing, right? Is like figuring out where that middle ground is, like, because you want to take lessons, you want to improve your play, you want to see what you did wrong and try to spot it, and because the difficult part is it's not like we get to redraft this year all over again and say, oh, I screwed up Bateman and Burks, now I'm gonna next year I'm gonna fade them.
Next 2023 I won't.
Yeah, right. So you're trying. That's the most difficult part, is of course figuring out if you were right or if you were wrong, or the nuance. It's generally not that binary, but then it's not even just figuring out even those lessons, right? The Dolphins lesson. Because guess what? We don't get a Dolphins lesson. Like there is no Dolphins next year.
Yeah, exactly.
Because this year happened, right? So now guess who's not going to be, you're not getting 15th round Devin.
We might get the Dolphins one again though, because they're going to bring in like another dust ball, and then Achane's like is not going to stay healthy. Or we might 100%. Actually get the Dolphins again.
Yeah, 100%. People will talk themselves into something with the this year. It was Tua couldn't stay healthy, right, because of the concussion stuff. We always come up with fun reasons to.
Tua is the only healthy quarterback in the league.
Literally, the single most divisive quarterback all summer in terms of will he stay healthy was Tua Tagovailoa, and he's the
it's
only
him and
guy
Dak in that range basically. They're only two survivors.
And just not that long ago, Dak's freaking leg was dangling. He had his leg up in the air and it was dangling like this. And Dak was bad. Remember, Dak threw too many interceptions. Dak wasn't very good. Turns out pretty good at football.
Well, Mike McCarthy wasn't calling the plays then. He's clearly the sharpest man in the league. What season is this? What happened?
Adam Thielen bounced back and he turned back into a pumpkin. Mike McCarthy is a genius. Brandon Staley, the analytics guru, just got fired this morning as of the time that we're recording this. Like the whole
he hadn't been guruing in a long time. That guy, he'd retired from his.
The word capitulation was the key, one of the keywords, catchphrases of the whole summer. You want to talk about capitulation? Brandon Staley is king capitulator. He came in and he was awesome. And a couple of fourth downs went wrong. He got roasted by Skip Bayless and Stephen A. Smith and Rex Ryan and shit. And he was like, "Nope, done with that." And we saw how that worked out. Go ahead if you have some.
Well, I think it just reminded me, the Adam Thielen pumpkin thing reminded me, because that's kind of an archetype one. And that was like one of my biggest misses for a while. And then notice I didn't bring him up as one that I'm like kicking myself on. No, I don't have the aging slot receiver on the worst passing offense in the league. I think we survived it, guys. But by the way, Jonathan Mingo's like, we talked about open score. He's like the worst open score in the league. And they keep feeding him targets because they're just amazing. Like, don't fire us, Tepper. Your picks are good.
The problem is nobody gets open on that offense. You have to throw it to Bryce has to throw it to somebody. Bryce sucks. I want to get that out of the way. It's just kind of like the Brandon. Yeah. It's kind of like the Brandon Staley thing. Brandon Staley sucks. I want to caveat it with that, right? But XYZ. Bryce Young sucks. I believe he sucks. I was not a believer. I hardly drafted him at all. I'm generally not going to draft 5'7" quarterbacks who also don't run, but. I feel a little bad for him, honestly. Like the line was supposed to be good. It's terrible. They don't have a single guy who can get open. Adam Thielen was like, okay. I know he was putting up huge numbers, but it wasn't like he was peak Devontae Adams out there for the first half. They just didn't have.
Well, it's also he was getting open, but it's like where?
Yeah,
it's
right. Reading the defense,
kind of stuff.
Reading a zone defense or reading an option route or something is very much different than the types of ways Tyreek Hill gets open or whatever. They're little bit different. But I just wanted to say I've dunked on Bryce and definitely the Panthers a lot. But I do watching the games because I have so much Chuba. I do feel a little bit bad for him because those pass catchers are absolutely atrocious.
They are. But Mingo's a guy I'm going to make bets on again. Not specifically Mingo because he stinks, but guys like Mingo, And I actually think betting on Mingo is like one of those things where I feel like it's an improvement in my play. Where like I didn't think Mingo was that great of a prospect, but he was a second round pick. They're going to try to get him on the field. They're going to try to get him involved. Reports out of training camp was that he was going to have a big role. He has had a big role. He's very bad. The offense sucks. But like we didn't know the offense was going to suck. CJ Stroud was one of the league winners, and all of his pass catchers were individually league winners because we didn't know that offense was going to suck. It was awesome. The Texans were terrible last year. They were really fun when everyone was healthy. So I think that's like actually a bet. The Jonathan Mingo, I probably took like too much Mingo and maybe not like I should have hedged a little more with Thielen, but like whatever, fine. I didn't like nail it. In terms of the exposures probably, but just generally like being in on Jonathan Mingo, I'm like, yeah, I like that I was in on a prospect who I didn't think was good, didn't actually turn out to be good, but got a bunch of opportunity. And honestly, Jonathan Mingo could go 5 for 80 and a touchdown one of these weeks. Jonathan Mingo could like kind of matter. Especially if it's a week 17 that he does that. Like he's someone that you're like not disappointed to have on your team. And the kind of larger point that he reminded me of is that I think I'm probably going to write about this, but I think one of the biggest differences between maybe like traditional fantasy football or like a traditional fantasy football mindset anyway versus best ball is that I'm starting to feel like rookies are more powerful than second year breakout bets. And that we actually, because the reason being that like busts aren't even like a problem. Like Tyquan Thornton was on my team that won Best Ball Mania 3. He stinks. He absolutely stinks. Jonathan Mingo could win someone $3 million this year, and he sucks because he's gonna be out there. Mm-hmm. And next year, will Jonathan Mingo be on the field and being fed targets in week 17? Probably not, because he sucks. And like I went back to the well on Alec Pierce and was kind of like, because I drafted a ton of Anthony Richardson, that's partly why. But it's like, hey, what if he breaks out in his second season? It's like, actually, dude, and I took Josh Downs. It was not on Josh Downs, but actually I should have been hammering Josh Downs because he's the guy that hasn't put anything bad out there. And it's always possible you get like a DJ Chark second year breakout, that's like kind of an enticing comp when you're thinking through, like, especially because like Pierce is a similar archetype, but it's the Downs play that is the better of the two, as long as, he's looking like he's going to have a role. The team seems to like him because he didn't have a ton of draft capital behind him, 3rd round pick, but those things were in place and you're already betting on the team. It's those rookies down the stretch that are more likely to get out there on the field, even if they suck.
I love that. That's so true, because it is a way to win twice, right? We're constantly talked all summer about all these different ways that we can set ourselves up for the playoffs and the micro edges and the micro levers. And ultimately what we're trying to do is give ourselves the best opportunity to get lucky, right? If you take to Twitter this past week, you probably saw a bunch of curmudgeons, a bunch of guys who don't love best ball, or they're just dicks. And they're out there being like, oh yeah, best ball is all about, did your guy stay healthy? And, do you get lucky in week 17 to have the guy who scores 4 touchdowns or whatever? And it's like, yes, obviously. Welcome to any sorts of gambling or sports speculation. The whole point is to try to put yourself in a place, especially in a peer-to-peer game like best ball or DFS, poker, whatever. Put yourself in a position against your peers to get lucky. And then in best ball specifically, DFS is the same, but with super heavy, top heavy structures, right? And all that kind of stuff. Like I want to win the whole thing. I don't want to just like do okay when I get lucky. So when I'm setting myself up to get lucky, and then when I get lucky, I want to get like Pat Corain lucky, right? Like I want to win the whole fucking thing. Yes, exactly. I'm sure that you would. I want to get so lucky that I finish first, or, I finish very, very near the top. So having a guy comparing the two is such a good, the second year versus the rookie. The second year guy who maybe didn't perform in year 1, I need to get lucky that was a fluke, which it could be. Like that's a coin flip. Like that's fine. That's a totally fine.
And he was on the field a lot. Yeah. I knew he was going to have a role. Like I'm getting routes. Here's the Alec Pierce bull case, right? I'm getting routes, and he had draft capital behind him. He's athletic, and he wasn't terrible. That's the whole case.
Right, exactly. So your whole case is this guy who wasn't terrible and is probably going to play a lot, takes a step, and still plays a lot. Yes. And that I'm not saying in a vacuum that that's a bad bet. I make those, and we're going to talk plenty for the next 9 months. And there are going to be some of those bets we do make. It's not to say ignore second year breakouts, but it is to say when I'm prioritizing those different things, the second year breakout needs to, I have one route to getting lucky, essentially. It's that his role stay, for Alec Pierce example, his role in terms of playing time and routes remains the same, and he gets better because he has to. He has to get better. He can't be this level of player. Yeah. He has to get better. The rookie, I can get lucky in a couple different ways. He could just be good. He can be Amon-Ra St. Brown. He can be Odell Beckham. He can be Justin Jefferson, whatever. Pick Puka. He can be that guy. And he's just a stud from day one. But even if he's not, like you said, they're not. The teams generally don't. Nothing is ever 100%. Generally don't just sit the rookie down, especially with any form of draft capital, right? 7th round pick is different than top 2-3 round pick. But they don't just sit him down and say, yeah, we're going to play this journeyman street free agent over you who also stinks because you stink. They're just going to say, rookie, go out there. They're incentivized for him to get more playing time and get better. And they're incentivized for their jobs for this guy to be good because they need to be proven that they made the correct decision drafting this guy. And so then you have all the other factors, right? Natural attrition around other players. If you get lucky that he's healthy, his teammates may not be. You drive more volume. That's somewhat what happened to Amon-Ra. Now you got all kinds of lucky with him because he's a stud and everybody else got hurt or traded. But that's the fucking point. That's the whole point is when I get how easy is it for me to get lucky, right? How many paths do I have to getting lucky? And then when I get lucky, what does that look like? And the rookies, they might both, right? Alec Pierce and Jonathan Mingo or Josh Downs may both if they get lucky, what does it look like? Maybe similar, but the amount of chances you have to get lucky with them are drastically different. And I don't think we ever, I didn't, but I don't think the market takes that into account to your point about the rookies.
Yeah. I think now, am I talking about Quentin Johnston and Jordan Addison and Jack Smith-Jigba? Not really. That's not really what I mean. I mean, I'm certainly down to, I took a ton of Jackson Smith and Jigba.
Please, God.
I didn't take a ton of.
Just one good game. Please,
just one.
God. Please. I will.
I advanced a bunch of him too. So
me too. He's on like every goddamn team.
Yeah. Come on, man. Hey, it's the Eagles pass funnel. That'd be fun.
Please, God. Gino's back.
Gino, yeah, let's go. Wow, I'm kind of into this now. Thank God I drafted him.
Talking ourselves into another 3 for 41.
Woo! I'll take it. Honestly, I'll take it. Give it to. I'll sign up. Where do I sign? Quentin Johnston. I didn't take that much of, but it's mostly because I was like, got to take Bateman here, so that didn't help. But like those guys, I think are sort of a different conversation, and I think maybe kind of an interesting one in its own right. But I'm talking about more like the very end of the draft, where, or at least the double digits, kind of in the Jonathan Mingo, because Mingo never got expensive. I thought maybe he would, but he never did. He was always kind of in that kind of 12th round range, where the opportunity cost is definitely like a lot lower than in the 8th round. But like your Josh Downses, your Puka Nakuas, your Tank Dells, like those are some of the biggest hits that we have, right? Especially Dell and Puka. I mean, those were some of the best picks you could have made in the entire draft, and they're both like moderate draft capital wide receivers with landing on depth charts that were fairly uncertain, with coaching staffs that probably for different reasons, but probably like want to see like what they've got in these guys. Like, McVay's, they're kind of like in a little bit of a reset year. They probably want to see what this 4th, 5th round pick has. And the totally new coaching staff with the Texans. So it's like it made sense for them to be checking out the rookies. We got good reports about these guys early on that they were going to get playing time. And so like, yeah, those guys turned out to be like elite wide receivers like right away, which is awesome. But even if they weren't, like, we would probably be seeing them on the field right now. Like Tutu Atwell just suffered a concussion. There's a world where Puka Nacua like kind of sucks and had a really good game last week and is set up for a good game this week because DeMarcus Robinson just got like 10 targets. So, you know what I mean? Like there's a world with like bad Nacua where actually you're psyched to have him still on an advancing team. And, I think, obviously Dell, bad Dell is maybe, didn't play enough to get hurt and is now going out there. Of course, he's with Davis Mills. So you're shit out of luck with bad Dell. Sorry about that. But I think it can work in a couple different ways, as you said. And because here's the other thing, right? What's this week going to be for people? Pain. You're going to lose. You're going to go from like you advanced. You had an awesome year. Okay. You advanced 35 teams. If you get 2 through, like that's
about
like
expectation.
That's expectation. 32 teams. So yeah, I should have just done 32 for the simple math, but it's 1 out of 16. So if you get 2 through, you hit expectations. So 30 of your 32 teams get wiped out in 1 week. And congratulations, that was what was supposed to happen. You didn't have a bad week. You're so lucky you didn't have a bad week. Great. Or you have an amazing week. Amazing week. You get 3 in. That's still kind of sucks. So that's what's gonna happen. And then the following week, you're just like praying that one of your if you crush it, it might be like 6. These 6 teams. You're praying that one of your 6 teams finishes first out of 16, which isn't likely, right? That's
you're a huge dog. Huge dog.
You're not gonna even, most likely, you won't even have a coin flip chance to advance a team to the final when you're looking at your week 16 in best ball mania. I'm talking about because you would need 8 teams. Are you gonna have 8 semifinal teams? You're not. Maybe like one person listening to this will, but right. You're not.
God knows I won't.
Yeah, I won't either. It's not how the advance rates work. So, I think that's sort of the other part of it is like we still don't even know how to assess who matters yet, because what people do in these next couple weeks is going to be so impactful. And so just the slight boosting of the chances that the guy is playing now versus he played earlier and wasn't very good and they kind of changed up the depth chart, which you're more likely to see with veterans, I think is just way more important than I even and I've wrote about how important rookies are and stuff. I've been, in on but I think it's I think it's more important than I even realized. As I'm sitting here this week, it's man, just give me, and does that mean I would have more Dell on my teams? I would, yeah. I wish I had more Dell on my teams. I would feel like I was sharper. It wouldn't have worked, but
what you said,
I think that's the way to play it.
All it brought me to, I was literally going to say, I was going to use this 1v1, this comparison, because as someone who shat on Adam Thielen all summer, which of course you can relate, we did it plenty, and he dunked on us for 4 weeks to start the season. Still get people commenting on current YouTube videos being like, you donkey, how could you think that Adam Thielen wasn't the wide receiver 1 for the Panthers and wasn't way too cheap, blah, 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 blah. And then you'll get, when you push back and you say, well, he had the absolute ceiling outcome to start the season and is still somehow proving the point of what we were saying with not drafting him, because now you flip over the cards and you have a bunch of Adam Thielen teams. You're not even excited. You don't even care about having him on teams because he's not a difference maker. He projects like shit and the offense stinks and all the above, versus or actually, people, the pushback, which I understand, people will say, yeah, but he helped me get more teams through. And I will say, fair, totally fair. You know who else did? Tank Dell, to your point. Tank Dell did the same and a lot more than what Adam Thielen did to help you push teams through. He has had more usable weeks, just as many spike weeks as Adam Thielen has. The only reason you're not, if you had advanced Tank Dell to the playoffs and he had not gotten hurt, you would be foaming at the mouth excited about having Tank Dell in the 17th round or whatever on best ball teams. And compare having Tank Dell right now, a healthy Tank Dell, again, assume CJ Stroud, right? Whatever. But even with, I would still, with Davis Mills, I think I'd rather have Tank Dell than Adam Thielen. But would you rather have Adam Thielen helped you push teams through, and so did Tank Dell? One of them had a chance to be an absolute smash league winner, late round pick in the playoffs. The other one has turned out to be stone dust. And now I say this, and maybe he'll have a good game this week.
Maybe he'll go off now.
Yeah, but point being, like, go look at the projections. It's not me. I'm not making them up. I don't create our projections. The Tank Dell would project better this week.
Well, Puka, I mean, I'm so annoyed that I don't have a big bag of Puka, because
Puka,
he's one of the clear guys here. And I mean, he projects awesome. Like it's like I was like, God, I guess I think 15. Cooper Kupp's slightly better, but it's not. It's like he's actually has the stronger season long profile and not playing through an injury. So, Puka Nacua, one of the, again, God, I wish I drafted more Puka Nacua, because he actually feels like a guy that could straight up like lock people out. Like, yes, you might have to have Puka Nacua, which is kind of crazy. And as chaotic as a season as this has been, that there's a player that like feels like pretty live to just be like, you had to have him. Kyron would maybe be another guy. But yeah, one of those two Rams, maybe both. Like they could
against the Commanders. Yeah, buddy.
Yeah. So like, to get you through, like you might kind of like need a Ram, one of these late round Rams to have like a strong chance of advancing. Obviously people will advance without them, even if they're the quote guy you need. But the thing is, like, there's such good actual real life players that like they could pretty easily be the guy you need in week 17. So like, I never sweated that hard the Adam Thielen thing. It was kind of like sorry, sorry everyone, like you don't have any Adam Thielen. My bad.
I didn't feel bad about my own teams. I felt bad that other people were feeling the stress because they made
me too. Yeah, because I push people off Adam Thielen, but Puka's the guy who's just been like, I've been terrified of. I mean, to be able to get that in the late rounds, the very last rounds, and have him hit the ground running, but then as a rookie, like it's funny, like he's still following the traditional rookie trajectory. It's just so juiced compared to what we normally are used to. Like he's getting better. Like he's now, it seems like maybe he could be, I know like Kupp had the touchdown last week, but like, man, the profile looks amazing for Puka right now. And there was that early season period when Kupp came back where like, it was like, okay, he's the clear number 2 to Kupp. And like, I don't really feel that way. They're kind of like co-number ones.
Agreed.
And I think that's your like late season boost effect that's happening. Puka's still benefiting from that. So like your hits at the rookies are magnified, and we're always going to have to be price conscious. And my guess is that a lot of these rookies do get priced up a bit more, and you will land on landmines with your Cedric Tillmans and stuff. But there's, I think, a lot, and I don't know, maybe it's an NFL thing where like teams know their rookies can contribute sooner. So they're like seeing what they have in guys sooner. But I just was not high enough on rookies, and I feel like I was really high on rookies.
Yeah, right. Just a thought I have lots of generally terrible, but I think about football a lot, even though we talk about, best ball and the fantasy side of it for a living. I think about all the silly little nuances of the NFL. I feel like the point on rookies, and I thought about it more with rookie tight ends. Maybe more than the rookie wide receivers, but it's kind of the same concept that you can apply to multiple guys, multiple positions. But like the game of football, it's like, you remember back in the day, like John Gruden would be on, Football Life or whatever, some stupid ESPN show, and they would like be proud of the fact that you had to say like 47 words to call a play, and like, so like I went to a small Division III school, but we ran, spread kind of air raid ish, but a very, very vertical offense. Our plays were like 2 words, literally, formation play. It was play concepts. And that's kind of what the air raid is, concepts, as opposed to like, you don't have to plays back in the Gruden days. You had to tell the offensive line, sometimes multiple different offensive linemen, what to do. You had to tell each position had a a word or multiple words that told them what to do. You had checks in there, you had motions in there, you had shifts in there, you had all that kind of stuff. Now, like, I bet you if you listen to a Mike McDaniel call, I don't know this for sure, so I could be totally wrong, but is like, that they have motions and shifts. Of course, you watch them. I mean, Jesus Christ, looks like a circus out there, the way the Dolphins move around, which is awesome. But they have a couple of different, they don't run that many different plays. The Dolphins don't. And so they have a play concept. You just run it out of different formations with different shifts, but you have concepts, right? Everybody knows what a handful of different concepts are. And these kids run them in college. They run them in high school. And so you come out there and like, dude, do you know how to run mesh? Like, yes, I ran it since I was in 7th grade. You know what I mean? Like, everybody knows how to do that. You know how to read the defense. You know how to do all that stuff. It's more difficult at the NFL level, obviously. But I feel like the game has changed a little bit. And this isn't, of course, in hand in the dirt NFL podcast or anything, but those little things do matter. Like, why are all the rookie tight ends smashing this year? Of course, it's because they're good. But that rookie tight end narrative had to do with how hard it was to come into the NFL and play tight end because of how complex NFL offenses were and how you had to learn all these crazy blocking schemes. And you had to learn all these crazy, like, it was hard for these guys to come in and learn. They had to learn how to be an offensive tackle and a wide receiver in really complex offenses. Now they barely have to learn how to block. Dalton Kincaid doesn't fucking block anybody. They barely have to learn how to block. And it's like, do you know how to run like the most 8, normally used passing concepts that every football team on the planet uses? Yeah. And so, why does that matter to us as best ball drafters? The whole rookie thing and young player thing, like you're talking about, like, they can come in and contribute right away because the game of football has changed a little bit.
Yeah, I think so. I also think this tight end class is just really
awesome.
Good.
Awesome.
Yeah, and you also have kind of the Trey McBride, coming on, and he was a strong prospect last year. I loved Dulcich in that class, but I ultimately have Trey McBride just ahead of him in my dynasty stuff, just because of like the prospect profile was a little stronger with his draft capital and everything.
He's
and
so
like,
good, dude.
He's so good.
So good.
He looked like a huge bust, but yeah, then all of a sudden, like, he could not draw targets to save his life at the end of last year, but.
Week 17, he had a good week. Him and Likely, right? I think, or Likely might have been week 18, but McBride had one decent game his whole rookie season, and it was week 17.
Yeah, right, because he proved the Algier Ertz corollary correct, but it was just the wrong tight end. That's such a funny little note from 2022.
Oh, God, what a stupid game!
I know, but yeah, I mean, I think the rookie tight end one. Now I don't know. I know we've got an elite tight end in this class. I don't know that much about the rest of the tight end class, but yeah, I mean, that was clearly one of the edges this year. I think one that I was on, fortunately. I might have a bunch of Laporta. I have a bunch of Mayer, which looked bad, and then it looked fine, and now it looks kind of good.
Pretty good last night.
Yeah, so I'm happy with that. And I think maybe, these rookie tight ends are another way to just underline the point of, like, these guys are more likely to play at the very end of the season. We hadn't seen as much of like a production increase. I remember Sam Sherman and I were talking about this because he was more Musgrave than Mayer, and I was Mayer over Musgrave, which looked strongly towards his side. And I would say probably you'd rather go back and take Musgrave over Mayer, I think, although Mayer looks pretty good. I think Mayer's better.
I think Mayer's better. I want to actually ask you about that because there's a smidge of nuance in there. Sometimes we get very specific situations like the Packers. I think Mayer, if you're in Dynasty, like, go subscribe to Pat. He'll guide you in the Dynasty space more than I will. But, like, I would be buying every possible Michael Mayer stock that I could buy in Dynasty. I think he's just very good, and not as expensive as Laporta and co. But with Musgrave, part of my concern was I don't think he was as good of a prospect as the Mayers
Me
and
neither.
Laportas and everything. But like to our point, like I didn't think Mingo was a good prospect, but we discussed all that nuance. Something that is hard for me to wrap my head around is when it's so the Packers took Luke Musgrave in the second round and Tucker Kraft in the third round. I kind of liked Tucker Kraft more
I kind of did too. Yeah.
than Luke Musgrave. I didn't
Before the draft, I did. Once the draft capital came in, I liked Musgrave better, but I didn't. It wasn't.
So I took more Musgrave. I didn't really take Kraft at all once the results came in, right? And then especially we got information that he was the starter in camp and preseason and everything. But I never felt comfortable. And part of it I always thought was because I didn't love Luke Musgrave as a college player, but also I think it was in the back of my mind like they also took this third round guy who what's the is there even a difference? I liked Kraft better, but even if I'm wrong about that, the difference was so minuscule that it's hard to hone in on him as compare that to Michael Mayer, who's competing with Austin Hooper, right? Or Sam Laporta, who's competing with Brock Wright or whatever. Like it's hard to get to as much Musgrave. And it wasn't really that much to do with Musgrave, but it was to do with this weird nuance of his teaming.
Yeah, and Musgrave is one that I do feel like I missed on. Like I was probably overly cautious with Musgrave because we got the information, and that's like, fading this type of scenario can really hurt. I mean, it's similar to the Puka scenario where it's like we got the information that they like him.
Yep.
You maybe didn't love him as a prospect, but he's going to be playing. He clearly was the starter. He was clearly ahead of Kraft. I don't think Kraft ever would have passed him. He gets hurt. So I was too cautious on Musgrave. It definitely should have had more of him. I know Hayden Winks was talking him up, I think in like June, like he was like really pounding the table. That was like before I was like comfortable enough, and I'm okay with that. But I do think once I got comfortable, I should have been more aggressive. So that's where I feel kind of bad with the Musgrave thing. We did get, luckily, helps to draft co-managers. Pete and Ben got me on Musgrave on a team over Mayer in FFPC, where Mayer was pretty useless in FFPC unless you picked him up in the last couple of weeks off waivers. So, I think I didn't play the Musgrave situation correctly, but I also don't mind betting on Michael Mayer to pass Austin Hooper by the end of the year. In fact, I want to do that again. So it's more like I probably should have spread out those exposures a little bit more. I kind of hammered Mayer and was too light Musgrave. But yeah, Mayer's, I think, a really, really good example of like, this dude was a college offense. Like he was, like they ran a passing game through this guy.
Multiple years.
Yeah. I mean, I remember telling Sean, I was like, I mean, at this point, like this doesn't even sound hyperbolic, but I was like, what's the difference? It's like if Mayer's athletic, what's the difference between him and Kyle Pitts as prospects?
Agreed. Mm-hmm.
Like he was super productive, early to clear, right? He wasn't going to have the high end draft capital, but it was pretty clear if athletic, he would have been like a mid first round pick. Unathletic, he was a early second round pick. I also think there's sort of a tight end athleticism narrative that's like completely lost the thread. Yes, we want these guys to be athletic, but Zach Ertz, Mark Andrews, they're like have the almost identical RAS profiles to Michael Mayer. There's something to be said for being sufficiently athletic. We would prefer that the guys be hyper athletes like Laporta, but it's not required. And then you're getting to bet on a guy to pass Austin Hooper. And it's like anytime that you can trade week 1 projection for week, 15, 16, 17 chance of clear runway, you do it. And it can be hard to do because it's like, am I actually getting that? But like second round draft capital, and if this felt dead by like week 3 or 4. It's like, oh
Stone
shit, Mayer's burned pick. I burned so many late round tight end dart throws on this guy. But it's like, no, like it just takes a while. And this is how it happens. It's a team like the Raiders, like some things happen. It gets a little weird. They fire their coach. They check out some new guys. They stomp on the Chargers. And finally this guy, he gets in the end zone for you. So, I mean, not that Mayer's like this big like victory lap take, but I do think he helps. And again, I probably took too much Mayer, not enough Musgrave, but I think he helps like just as a larger rookie thing of like this guy with draft capital, solid prospect profile, good, actually more than solid, very good prospect profile. very minimal competition ahead of him. You know, we make these bets, and it's like if Mayer advances a team this week that wouldn't have otherwise advanced,
Worth it.
That could be a $3 million touchdown that he scored week 15. Like that touchdown is worth a lot more than, you know, a lot of the scoring in season, because the odds that like any given week of Adam Thielen actually advanced you is probably lower than the odds, you know, that if Michael Mayer advances you this week, you know, that's a bigger boost. Most
100%. 100%. It does slightly contradict what we were talking about with the rookies versus second years, but Trey McBride, it's a very similar thing to me. To Michael Mayer, one has Austin Hooper in front of him, one has Zach Ertz in front of him. Both are extremely good prospects. Trey McBride, obviously, in his second season, but was similar. I actually had apparently a tweet from two years ago on Trey McBride that so for people that don't know, like you mentioned, Michael Mayer he was a college offense. So was Trey McBride. He just happened to do it at Colorado State versus Notre Dame, so it doesn't get quite the same level of kind of hype. But they threw for like 2,300 yards or so. Colorado State did. Trey McBride's last year, he had 1,100 of them. He's a fucking tight end, and he had 50% of their passing offense.
He might have 50% of their passing yards this week. I mean,
yes, correct. He actually did do that, I think, once with the Cardinals so far. But yeah, just like absolute dominant. Say whatever you want about PFF grades and all that, if you care. But if you look at PFF grades, he had the same receiving grade as Kyle Pitts did in college. So obviously is not the athlete that Kyle Pitts is, although he's a pretty good athlete. Trey McBride is. He reminds me of a little bit of the young Travis Kelce. Not quite as much shiftiness, but he has some juice in the open field. They've thrown him some jump balls occasionally, and like they get him the ball on the run. I don't know. I'm a little bit probably too much of a bull on Trey McBride, but he's another guy like similar to Mayer that
he's really good.
Yeah, I think they're really, really good. And just like all these tight ends are such difference makers. The rookies in particular are like guys that I really, really want. Like when I scroll my teams, like if I have a Laporta McBride team, I'm like, you know, I gotta go take a cold shower or something. You know, if I got those guys on a team, because it's like that. But that's so powerful at this point in time, right? Even Mayer, as you said, getting a touchdown, double-digit fantasy points, like from a last round pick at tight end, like there's a good chance no tight end separates. And so if I just get the score close enough to what everybody else has with my last round pick, just give me that on every single team. I'll take it. I want to talk about one thing that I've asked a bunch of the folks in our Discord. I asked Rob the other night that I think is really interesting at this time of year. It's easy to pinpoint the guys we're most excited about heading into the best ball playoffs, because it's the guys who have smashed, right? It's all the guys who, like for me, I'm just sweating out Kyren and Howell, like lead me to the promised land. I keep saying that's my Super Bowl. Like no one else is going to have that on, you know, the big screen in their homes. Like
they might. I mean, it's good. It's fun DFS game, dude.
Me, Sam Howell's parents, and Kyren's parents are going to be the ones watching that game, you know, and nobody else gives a shit except me, because that's it for me. That game will make or break my week. But like everybody's like, yeah, I mean, people have been playing Sam Howell and DFS, and obviously Kyren's almost 8K on DraftKings. I think people know that he's pretty good in fantasy now. Is there anybody that you drafted? It could have been Mayer last night, but that you drafted over some, or I guess technically didn't draft, but maybe you have on teams that you're looking at and you're like, they haven't been awesome. They have it, you know, they were certainly not the reason I got here to the best ball playoffs. But when I scroll and I see them, I'm like, okay, like I'll go to war with you, right? You mentioned Mingo before, where it's just like, am I projecting Mingo for a big game? No, Mingo, by the way, was DFS chalk a couple of weeks ago. So I like to use the DFS stuff to be like, okay, there's something going on here that we should be excited about if people are playing them in DFS. But is there anybody that kind of stands out to you from that lens?
No one's jumping to mind of like,
like non-chalk, right? The tournament play in DFS mindset, not the stone chalk, but
I
somebody.
mean, I don't hate that I have a bunch of Marvin Mims still. You know, the guys, he's out there running the
Lions
routes now.
against the Lions are handing out points like candy on defense in the dome.
Yeah, so I mean that doesn't bother me.
That's going to be your Taekwon, isn't it? You're going to get like 4 teams to the finals despite an average advantage because Marvin Mims is going to have some big game.
How sick would it be if Davis Mills powers Robert Woods and the take actually pays off?
Not sick at all. No, please, no. We're going to shut this show
Legendary
down.
Sickos, baby. Robert Woods. One time.
He's got to be he's one of the faces of the show. If you made a thumbnail of players from the summer that we talked about, Robert Woods is way too high on the list.
By the way, figure out what my Robert Woods take is next year, and then just draft every single other wide receiver.
Seriously, you found all of the league winners, and it was just the teammates of the guy that you liked.
I mean, I did the first. I think it was the first article that I wrote for Legendary Upside was about Nico Collins. So we're getting. I'm claiming Nico a little. I wasn't out on Dell, but yeah, obviously could have hammered the other guys quite a bit more. Although, hey, like I said, these weeks matter more than the other seasons.
Literally goes against everything we just talked about for
I know
for over.
He wasn't a good pick at all. It's a terrible pick. But hey, man, if he gets me there, I'll take it.
Oh shit, that is good. All right, I'm gonna throw out. We'll see if it'll spur some thoughts. This is a little bit cheating because it's injury. I don't want to do it all because of injuries. But I put out a tweet from Spike Week. If you recall, last year in week 15, just a crazy freaking week, man. In week 15 last year, where it was like all late rounders that propelled people into week 16. The wide receiver 1 was Zay Jones in week 15, and the wide receiver 2 was KJ Osborne in week 15. The running back 1 overall in week 15 of last year is actually a guy who I like again this week, Jerick McKinnon. And it's a couple different things. Obviously, Isaiah Pacheco just got ruled out today, so that's like driving most of it. But if anybody watched the Chiefs game last week, the CEH experiment was predictably an absolute disaster. He is horrible. Every time they gave him a touch, it was like a massively negative play for the Chiefs. And they are now down in the shit. Like they got to win some football games. They are like people like with Tyreek. I'm still somewhat bullish that Tyreek plays because I don't think people understand that the Dolphins are in like a little bit sketchy territory, not necessarily to make the playoffs, the Chiefs or the Dolphins, but like things could get ugly here. Like we're talking about like definitely road games in the playoffs. Who knows what happens? Both of those teams could be the ones letting the Bills in. I don't think either of them want the Bills to be in the playoffs, and they might be the ones letting them in. The Dolphins might be letting the Bills win the division if the Bills beat the Cowboys. But long story short being, the Chiefs, I think it's time. It's go time. Like we can't be messing around anymore. And last year and historically, when it was go time, they went to Jerick McKinnon, and they've saved him all year. You might as well unleash him. And I just feel one of those, 3 touchdown Jerick McKinnon games that we just did not see coming. He was completely useless all season. And if you were able to sneak him through, I know it's the Patriots and maybe they won't push back that much, so it doesn't count. But like if Pacheco were to miss again next week, I would feel the same way, that I think the Chiefs, it's go time. They need to win. Let's put it on Mahomes. And if you're going to put it on Mahomes, I think that means more McKinnon than it means CEH. So like if I have him on a team, I'm not too upset about it.
I like that one. I'll the Robert Woods ones is 99.9% a joke, but I'll pump my bags, my good part of my bags, and because I think the 3 guys, none of these guys like powered you there. But I think I actually am happy to see JSN when I flip over.
Mm-hmm.
He's looked a lot better the last couple of weeks. He's in a really good spot this week. With Geno back, we're getting Geno back, right?
Yeah, he practiced.
Yeah,
yesterday.
Okay, so yeah, I think that's pretty sweet. And he could definitely be one of these guys who has a big spike week, and it's like this is why we drafted him. So I also feel, like the thesis of the play basically is kind of this idea that he would matter more now than he did before, and he does, and I was able to advance him. So I'm kind of psyched to see him, even though he hasn't been great so far. I'm psyched that I have Brees teams. The dude's getting like 20% of targets now. Not always his carries are coming down, but they're feeding him even more targets. And so
because they can't run block for shit. He gets hit in the backfield every play.
I know, it's awful. But and then Jalen Warren, just to finish, just pumping the highest guys that I drafted all summer. I mean, I'm psyched to still have Jalen Warren. It hasn't quite hit yet, but the guy is like immensely talented. He's number one. Achane's actually number one if you basically just like put empty carries on Achane, because he doesn't meet the minimum on NFL Next Gen's stats anymore. But if you just like calculate it yourself, he is like number one by a mile still.
Even if you gave him a bunch of useless carries, that's how good. That's
he's
how
still
good he's been.
But yeah, but Warren's basically, he'll show up in the list as number one, but he's really number two. In rush yards over expected per attempt. I mean, he's been like one of the most efficient runners in the entire NFL. He's an awesome receiver. And so bet on talent, bet on the Colts letting up points on the ground, which they have. So I'm still psyched to see those guys. Like, those are all kind of like later season bets, and they kind of, two of them overperformed expectations a little bit. Jack Smith and Jibgo underperformed expectations, but this is the point of having them. So I'm happy that, there were, three of the biggest pieces of my portfolio, and I feel good about having them as big pieces of my advancing portfolio too.
I totally agree on all those. I'm going to throw out just a couple more. I don't have to elaborate quite as much as McKinnon. This is definitely the big pieces of my portfolio, but I'm excited about for this week in particular, all the Commanders. They've been the B-Rob has been the best skill player to have drafted all season, and frankly, Curtis Samuel, 50-50 between B-Rob and Curtis Samuel have been the best skill guys.
I think B-Rob was a little bit better.
Yeah, definitely was a little bit better. But like I got some Curtis Samuel teams that he certainly helped. He certainly helped me.
Yeah, no, he's been good.
Get to where I'm going, and obviously, but that was at the expense of Terry McLaurin and Jahan Dotson. But I know it's cope. I'll fully admit it's slight copium because I have tons of those guys, in particular Dotson. But I think we've seen the ceiling though that exists for some of those guys, and the volume is not going anywhere. Like they have especially Brian Robinson is out this week. They have no ability to beat somebody by running the football. Now they don't really have an ability to beat teams no matter what. Yeah. But the only way, right? The defense is so bad and they can't run. So they just have to put it all on Sam Howell's shoulders, and
they're willing to,
and they're absolutely willing to. And I think that this week in particular, you're going to get something from someone. Is my guess expectation. Do I have any idea if it's McLaurin or Dotson or Samuel or Gibson or Logan Thomas or Cole Turner? Please post by a second year bump, please God. Stop playing Logan Thomas. You're fucking 4-8. The season is over. Give it up with this dust ball, Logan Thomas, for my best.
You don't even have to play Hal if you don't want to. Just let's see what we got in Brissett.
Okay. Next week, I'm not counting on any points from Sam Howell in 16 and 17 because he plays Jets and 49ers. Just let me have this one, please.
You've earned this one. The Howell one, that was one of our biggest debates, which you won handily. And I played it the worst way by actually taking McLaurin and Dotson and not always stacking Howell, because I was like, oh, if he gets benched, I'm okay because I don't have Howell and I've got the receivers and Brissett's good, so I'll be okay either way. But no, I won't, because they suck and Howell was the way to play it.
Yeah, I think that was pretty fluky. I don't. So I'm curious on your take on that one, actually, because we had obviously lots of conversations and we agreed on plenty of things, but we also disagreed on plenty of things. And like I said, sometimes one of us ended up right and the other on something else. But on the Howell thing, I actually don't think like your thought process was necessarily wrong. And whether or not your process about, Jacoby Brissett being there was right or wrong, not drafting Howell, but drafting him through those wide receivers, I actually think was totally fine. But do you have have you analyzed that and thought differently about the whole kind of way you got to your Howell take, or just curious what, we haven't talked. This is the first that we haven't talked about that since the summer.
No, I don't have that much of a man, I really blew it not drafting Howell feeling. And maybe it's just maybe I just haven't fully come around to him overperforming expectations. But the thing is, he kind of hasn't overperformed expectations that much. He's not good, he's not bad, but he's not good. And I think he's one of these guys who's going to stick around. They'll probably bring him back as a starter next year, but he's going to wash out, and we're going to forget that he ever existed. He's kind of at that kind of middling. I mean, in the EPA per game chart that I have in the walkthrough every week, he is smack dab in the middle of. He's right next to Gardner Minshew. He's kind of a worse version of Baker Mayfield.
That's not a bad comp. Yeah, I think he's in that ballpark of quarterback. I think he has a smidge more upside than a Gardner Minshew, but Baker did too. So I think he could have a very similar career trajectory to Baker, where he's constantly going to stick around. If he lands in the right spot, I think he could stick at that spot. But he's not Mahomes, Hurts, whatever. I think he's in that Minshew Baker category. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I do too. And you're always going to have job security issues with those guys. And I'm just I don't want to. Now, this was a year where having Howell was actually very powerful. And so this was kind of I feel like this was kind of an amazing run out for Howell. And what I would say I underestimated was how much Eric Bieniemy would pass, which was somewhat predictable. So that one, I'm I should have probably just drafted a little more Howell, because, he's Ritter, he's probably better than Ritter, and they're going to pass a lot more. So right there, you just, if you're open to taking Ritter at all, which I wasn't that open to, but I would kind of mix in, I was taking some Mac Jones, who actually did get benched, which is the hilarious part. So you're taking Mac Jones, who's definitely going to get benched for Zappy. So just take some more Howell. So I should have done that. So I definitely think should have been more open to taking Howell in comparison to some of these other quarterbacks. Because the funny thing is, Rivera did survive the year, and I was they're firing Rivera. They're firing.
I can't believe that.
Yeah. So that situation. It's kind of the Bieniemy of it all, I think, is what I probably missed the most. Is this dude's going to chuck it. He's a good coach. The team will actually be somewhat successful, or at least that this outcome is plausible. And so mix in a little bit more Howell. Now I did actually advance a Howell BBM team, so maybe I take this whole thing down with Howell and
see you in the finals, baby.
yeah. But yeah, I think that part of it, the Bieniemy part, and the Howell being okay might be enough because of Bieniemy. Part of it I underestimated. I think I do also think that there are seasons where this outcome for Howell doesn't really move the needle for anyone.
For sure.
There are seasons where Kirk Cousins stays healthy, and Aaron Rodgers stays healthy, and Richardson stays healthy, and CJ Stroud isn't out with a concussion this week. There's having Howell is going to mean a lot to a lot of teams. And that's also kind of fluky, but yeah, Howell's definitely a miss for me. I, in general, want to still remain conscious of bench risk at quarterback, and I think that's probably going to be an edge for me compared to the field, who will play it a little bit too similarly to season long, and so I don't want to lose sight of that. But I definitely discounted Howell more than I discounted Mac Jones. And, serves me right, because Mac Jones got benched.
I do. We're gonna need to make a poster and put that on the wall or something like that. I drafted Mac Jones and thought Sam Howell would get benched, but it is justice. I got so many things wrong.
Sam Howell's gonna get benched. You got take the safe guy, Mac Jones.
Gotta take Mac Jones.
Someone called me out in one of the comments one time, and they were right.
Did they really? What?
Yeah, they were like, "Why do you think Mac Jones is going to get benched? He's going to get benched too. Like, he's probably more likely to get benched." So
the funny thing about Mac Jones is he got benched and got his job back. Then he got benched and got his job back, and now finally it was 3 strikes and you're out for old Mac Jones.
Right.
I'm not saying we don't need to talk about.
But Howell looked benchable at one point. Like were you sweating after that Bills game?
100%. Howell's Valley, the ups are pretty good with Howell. Like it happens with young semi-talent. Like the Baker example is a good one. The good is pretty good for him. He has a strong arm. He can make a lot of throws. He makes some bad decisions.
He hangs in there like too much, but he hangs in. He will.
I can't believe you want to talk about all the injuries. Like we talked about the Tua thing. The dude, it was on pace. They're not going to get there, but was on pace to break the all-time sacked record that David Carr had. If you remember from the Texans years, he was like, they were on pace to shatter that in like week 8. And he runs, and he also doesn't know how to fucking slide. The guy has taken more hits than anybody on the planet this season, and he has not gotten hurt. And all these other guys have gotten hurt. So, I mean, he got knocked out of one game and came back. And I dude, sweating Howell games is one of the most intense sweats ever. Like, they crater out on offense sometimes so bad that it's like disgusting to watch, right? Like the Bills game. They were so bad. They only threw it 29 times in that game because I think they got like 4 first downs the whole game. Like could not move the ball. He got sacked like 12 times in the Bills game. And I wish that were an exaggeration, but it was double digits. But like the lows are so low. And like you said, like early in the season, I'm like, oh no, Pat's gonna be right. We're gonna have to cancel the show because I don't want to have to hear about Jacoby Brissett. And Pat was right. But the highs are pretty good actually. Like he's a good runner. He's a good runner. Like you said, he's tough.
He's got a good arm.
He's got a great arm. He can make a lot of throws. I think he's an okay decision maker. Kind of like the Minshew Baker thing. Sometimes they make some really good decisions. Sometimes they make some really bad decisions. So that makes you kind of okay. I'm hopeful for him long term, like not as a franchise quarterback, but I think he's shown enough that, like, I mean, Jesus, look at some of the quarterbacks we're watching, Tommy DeVito,
right.
and
he's fun too. Like it is nice. I think the league's better for him being in it right now. Agreed. I also, dude, could you imagine him? Like he would have in a late 90s, early 2000s Mike Martz offense, where you just have him dropping back 7-step drops. Just like chucking it deep, getting crushed by like the biggest defenders of the giant shoulder pads, just like getting taken to the turf, like looking up, seeing it's like complete. Like we would have loved this guy.
You are literally defining my Rams fandom when I was younger. As everybody can probably see, there's nothing but St. Louis shit behind. Well, and Michael Jordan, but St. Louis shit behind me. I was as big of a St. Louis Rams fan as you probably could ever get. I believe, maybe like sophomore year of high school, something like that. One of my buddies and I, we went to like every day of Rams training camp. We would go. We started a freaking blog writing about the Rams. Like, yeah, I was that cheesy, lame dude. But like, we were upset. Called? Like, was it ramscentral.com? No longer, obviously. It no longer exists. But there might be. I'm sure people can go find some traces.
Is anyone camping on it?
On the internet. It's not in my GoDaddy.
No, just anymore. Can't be reached. No one's claimed it.
No longer in my GoDaddy account. There's a lot of useless URLs in there. But anyway, I was diehard, like absolutely die. Like, but it was because of the Greatest Show on Turf days, like you mentioned. Mike Martz offense, like, just made me love football. And all I'm envisioning is the post Kurt Warner era of the Mike Martz time, the Mark Bulger era.
Yes, Mark Bulger. Yeah.
Of Mike Martz. And that's exactly what happened. 7-step drop, You don't leave anybody ever in to pass protect, which is kind of what the Commanders do. Wait for this week. Watch how many times Antonio Gibson goes out and Howell gets crushed in the backfield. But yeah, Bulger ends up after the play laying on his back. His eyes are like this, and that's the Howell experience. It feels very much like that lack of pass protection from the Mike Martz days.
Yeah, I mean, this guy could be like, I sort of like in the tough guy quarterback mold is kind of what I'm getting at too. Which, yeah, he's playing in the wrong era. You know,
he really is.
He would have a 0% bench risk if this was if he was getting to be the Merc Bulger. Like no one hangs in the pocket like Sam Howell. It's like, yeah, that's the problem.
Get the ball out or run, you psychopath.
Yeah, get the ball out. Anyway, I'm rooting for the Sam Howell. I've got my one share. We can all celebrate together.
We can all
kumbaya. Sam Howell finishes dunking on me this week.
Yeah, nobody contact me during that game. It starts at 4:05 Eastern. I will not be reachable during Rams Commanders. I will not be sitting down, and I will not have my phone. I will just be enjoying my Super Bowl. I know Pat's got some stuff to do this afternoon. My dogs are getting antsy. I want to leave the people with some hot takes for the best ball playoffs. If you had to, prognosticate about how this thing plays out, we're of course going to be wrong about all of this. I certainly would not have projected the game last night to play out and talk about a kickoff to the best ball playoffs that was very unforeseen, with the Raiders laying the smackdown on the Chargers. But like, what are some of the things, 1, 2, 3 different things that you're thinking, like you're looking ahead and you're like, I could really see this. It doesn't have to be like, oh, we get to week 17. I think this guy's going to, have the big game in week 17. But like, what's going to like shake up, the best ball playoffs? What's going to be that thing that comes through and helps people either get there or win the whole thing, whatever?
I'll go ahead and I'll say, I'm just looking up exactly which week this is going to happen in. I'm going to say that you have to have, in order to win Best Ball Mania 3, you have to have George Kittle.
Oh, you are, that's good. I'm very, very excited to hear you say that. I'd like to hear why do you think that is?
Because they get the Commanders in week 17 and Kittle goes nuts. And we've talked about tight end and how, tight end's quite a bit deeper. There were a number of ways to get there at tight end. I'm a big proponent of elite tight end, which hasn't really, you'd rather have not gone elite tight end and gotten some of these guys late. And the nice thing about these late round guys is actually they do have ceiling, like Trey McBride and Sam Laporta. Like they have legitimate ceilings. So it's not the run out for elite tight end that we wanted, but George Kittle is having an awesome year. We've got, Brock Purdy in the MVP discussion. So the 49ers maybe putting on the Commanders' absolutely atrocious secondary, total lack of a pass rush, and Kittle leading the way so that it fits my narrative. If Kittle, this still remains true, I think. If Kittle has one of his Kittle games in the fantasy playoffs, in Best Ball Mania's playoffs, like you're gonna really, really, really want it. And I think if it happens week 17, like you'll just straight up have to have it.
I think that makes a ton of sense. And I have Kittle's. I really don't have. I have a bunch of Mark Andrews, but in terms of alive elite tight ends, Kittle is the one I have the most exposure to. A little bit of him being awesome, a little bit of San Francisco being awesome, and a little bit of the rest of the tight ends not being very good at the elite level. But man, 49ers just feel like, I'm not saying it's similar to like what you said before, that like the Rams could be the guy that like, you have to have, which doesn't actually mean that you can't advance without them, but it means that you have a huge leg up on everybody if you have those guys. I feel that way just about San Francisco in general. Like when I look to teams, I don't necessarily care if it's McCaffrey or Kittle or Debo or Ayuk or Purdy or whatever. But like, if I got any of those dudes on there, like it gives you the warm and fuzzies, right? To have any 49er on there, because no matter what happens, Kyle Shanahan doesn't let off the gas. Like like everything is just set up so nice. It's so consolidated. They can all get there in the same game. Like not like big ceilings, but like this team can hang 40 any week, and all those guys have like at least usable scores. So like the 49ers are easily one of the teams I'm most excited for. A little bit of one of my, big stands from the year, but who I'm really excited for because of some of the stuff we outlined before, because I think they're a really good offense, and because advance rates on like all these guys are not that crazy, actually is the Baltimore Ravens. Lamar Jackson is one of the elite quarterbacks that really hasn't like done that much. Like he's been okay, and he had a good week last week against the Rams, which is why Howell's gonna hang 40 on him. But it hasn't been awesome for Lamar this year. He's been okay, but just you're always left like wanting more from even when Lamar has his good games. But I don't think that is like indicative of what the upside is for him. Isaiah Likely, I think, is not as good as Mark Andrews, but if you have Isaiah Likely on teams, like add him to that tight end mix of guys you want to have on teams. He's certainly not going to be super high owned. I don't think he's the same as like last year, but I don't care. Actually, being out there and running almost every route with Lamar,
91% route participation last week.
Yeah, I'll take it, man. I don't care. I don't care if he's doesn't have the same target share as last year. I don't care if it's Zay. Even Bateman on teams. I don't think Bateman's going to like win it for me, but dude, all it takes is one, and that passing offense is really good. Like it's really good. I don't think they can lean on that run game. Even Keaton is fun, but Keaton's fun. But they can't like lean on Gus to go win them games. And they get the Jags this week. I'm sure that and probably have some even data offhand. That Jags defense has collapsed. It probably wasn't very good anyway to begin with. It was probably just a little bit of flukiness for the first like month or 6 weeks or whatever. I think I saw something first half of the season, the Jags defense was something like 7th in EPA allowed per play, and they're like 28th ever since. It's somewhere. Don't quote me on that.
They've been a big pass funnel. That's one of the ones where it's funny. I got like pushback, or there's like a anti-pass funnel narrative. But I feel like pass funnel stuff has been extremely useful this year, and the run funnel stuff, because I think it's, especially if you're looking at things like our teams shifting to the pass against these teams. Do they have a negative pass rate over expected? Is their pass rate over expected like shifting up or down in a meaningful way on against these teams? And the Jaguars have been like a pass funnel in those types of metrics all season. Even when I was like a little bit skeptical of their run defense, and I thought their pass defense was better than it actually was, like 8 weeks ago or something. The pass funnel data was telling us teams think you attack the Jaguars through the air. So yeah, that's an interesting matchup for the Ravens. They've kind of needed teams to push them, and I don't know that Trevor Lawrence is necessarily up to it, but they were aggressive last week against the Browns, so I think they'll pass. So that I like that one. I mean, and the Ravens are good. They haven't had the fantasy results, but the Ravens, I mean, they're like the favorite for the 1 seed. It's not breaking news, but they're kind of a sleeping giant potentially for fantasy.
That's exactly it. It feels like that sleeping giant that has been like fine all year, but just has never really exploded. No, I mean, Zay's been very good, but no one has like set the world on fire to where, they're crazy popular in the best ball playoffs. And like, even if they have a big game this week, they're not that popular. They're not so popular that they'll be, crazy hot, right? This isn't 2 years ago, Cooper Kupp and Mark Andrews type of a situation. And so I think they have a big game this week against Jacksonville. Then they get San Fran next week, who is not like a dream matchup, but if you're going to attack San Fran, I'm sure as hell going to do it through the air, which is, again, Mark Andrews and all those pass catchers feels good. And then you get Miami in week 17, who is also another fine defense, but I'll take my chances against their defense. I mean, Will Levis just absolutely carved them up. Xavier Howard is a shell of himself. Jalen Ramsey can't do everything. I'll take the shootout in that one. The Ravens just feel like, we're close to, we made this bet on them as a collective over the course of the whole season. And it was like kind of right, but hasn't really hit in a big way. And it's just like set to explode over the best ball playoffs. I just feel really, really strong about like Lamar stacks or really any Ravens exposure.
So let me build on that one. I'll give the people one more before we get out of here. I'll say another guy that you have to have in week 17 is Devon Achane. He comes back from this toe injury, and we get the Ravens and the Dolphins, right? This is going to have major playoff implications.
Mm-hmm.
There's no messing around here from Mike McDaniel. You know, he's getting his best guys out there. This is going to be a big game. Achane, the reason you have to have him is because he misses this week and next week.
Oh,
and so,
wow.
So he doesn't help you get there. So it's teams that drafted Mostert and Achane. It's teams that, you know, are able to sneak in without, you know, with just Achane that don't have Mostert. So you're going to get, we're talking Devon Achane, mega leverage spike week against the Ravens, week 17 correlation, because you want the finally we get, you know, the Ravens being pushed. So Lamar Jackson blows up just like Erik laid out. You're going to want that. The week 17 correlation play ends up being Achane bringbacks on Lamar Jackson stacks.
Now I'm gonna roster bait to close. Just like we started with we started with something.
You immediately have a team.
We started with something that the people love, and we're gonna finish with something that the people love. Hearing about a team that they don't have, that somebody else has. But you just happened to outline one of the teams. I told you at the beginning I was looking for Antonio Gibson teams because Brian Robinson is out.
I don't have any of these teams, by the way. So I told you I'm roster baiting.
I told you I'm excited. I told you I'm excited. I told you I'm excited for the Ravens. We got Sam Laporta. I told you I've been looking for any news that maybe Cole Turner is actually going to touch the field this week. Cole Turner on this team, but actually good wide receivers: Amon-Ra, Jalen Waddle, DK Metcalf, our boy JSN, Gabe Davis, and Zay Flowers. So we somehow avoided Rashad Bateman. It's stacked with Lamar, Kenny Pickett, whatever. We'll ignore Kenny Pickett, but Antonio Gibson, Achane is one of the Dolphins bringbacks, and we got my guy Kyron and our guy Chuba down here. We got Tajay, Algier. So
how are you going to spend the money, dude?
We got
this team is sick.
When we win 3 milli with this team with both of our takes for week 17, we'll celebrate. So I'll throw a pizza party.
Hell
you guys can all have some pizza. But
by the way,
it was just funny. It was just funny that you brought it up because I was like, this is literally one of the teams I'm most excited about, and it has everything that you just said.
That team is filthy. That's an amazing team. That's Best Ball Mania, right?
Yeah, Best Ball Mania. Don't look at the rest of my teams. If you're in any of my pods that aren't that team, don't look at those because they're not very good. But I'm excited about that one.
That team's like worth 5 teams. That team's nasty. The Pickett one, I just want to note. I maxed the Mastiff. I got 4 of the 7 in. My worst.
That's nice.
My worst at the 7. You know how like you can because they're slow. I did them slow, so I would like name the team like a note to myself. Gretch was the one who got me on this tip.
Yep.
And my worst scoring team is called Take Pickett.
Did you ever change? Did you just leave it?
No, I just left it.
Yeah,
I just left it as Take Pickett.
Leave this trash as Take Pickett. I should have named all my Rashad Penny teams that like this is fucking Rashad Penny. Just don't even look. Just ignore it. We will be back at a future date to talk about all of the absolute misses, such as Rashad Penny and Kenny Pickett. But thank you, of course, for joining us. As always, I like to get to the promotion at the very end of a 2-hour episode. If you have not, up until this point, you probably already have, but if you have not, make sure you go subscribe to Legendary Upside on legendaryupside.com. If you are a Legendary Upside subscriber, you can use promo code LEGUP on Spike Week to get 40% off of our tool subscription. So with playoff best ball season upcoming, you have access to our tool called the Draft Hacker. I can barely draft without it anymore. I think I actually am obviously very biased, but I think it's a huge edge, especially in formats like playoff best ball, to have a tool that can help. It's not telling you who to pick, but can just point out things that can help make better teams while you're drafting. And you can get 40% off of that subscription. You also get access to Draft IQ and all of our premium tools at Spike Week if you are a Legendary Upside subscriber. We will we'll maybe be back at some point over the course of the rest of the season to talk some playoff best ball. We considered it today, but way too many. We got to talk about Robert Woods and Cole Turner and stuff. We can't get to playoff best ball today, but we'll be back at a future date. Pat, do you have anything else before we hop out of here?
Yeah, no, the playoff best ball stuff is we're focusing on that too over at Legendary Upside. We'll be working on kind of a different style of tool. This would be like it's going to be like a shiny app that's on Legendary Upside that you can. It's essentially dynamic rankings. So using some of the things we know about playoff best ball, we don't want to be drafting like 5 and 6 teams. We want to be drafting like teams that can actually all play each other in the third round to help get you to the Super Bowl. You want a live team for the Super Bowl. Kind of like giving you a dynamic rankings list as you put in the picks you've made to help you make better picks. I also think that one of the reasons to sign up for Spike Week with promo code Leg Up is because you can have the draft hacker, which actually has access to the draft as you're actually drafting, and then you could have these dynamic rankings up, which are giving you some more player-based recommendations. So if you want to go like full Minority Report with you got everything, you get the gloves on. And you're like, all right, Ravens to the Super Bowl.
Charlie from Always Sunny. You're over. You're smoking a cigarette. Yeah.
I genuinely think it will give you a massive edge because this is a game where, like we talk about the Week 17 stuff, and it's like almost like a fun throwaway. We talk, this game, the Commanders 49ers will shoot out, Ravens, Dolphins will shoot out. You're going to want that correlation. But like it's a little bonus lever that we're pulling. And with the playoff best ball, it's not a bonus. It is table stakes. Yep. And many, 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 many people are not pulling that lever. They're not live to win.
Correct.
And so having a couple different ways of keeping you on the rails. Like this isn't like a small thing you're doing to like increase the EV of an already live team. This is how you build live teams. And I think for me, like having tools that help me just like very quickly assess like where I am in the draft, where I am in a scenario-based drafting game. I think you really can't like understate how important it is, in my opinion.
I totally agree. Obviously, we're both biased. I'm certainly biased, but I think once Pat started telling me about what they were doing, I got very excited. Of course, we were lucky enough to help Pat. We developed our own simulations for the playoffs and playoff odds and all of that are helping with some of the rankings. And I just like, if it were me and I were trying to draft how I wanted to like be the perfect playoff best ball player, I would have what Pat is describing as what's coming out on legendaryupside.com. And I would have the draft hacker. Like you said, I would have multi-screens and I would be drafting with both of those up and having them help me navigate through my drafts. You can do some of these things in your head, but the human brain is only capable of doing so much. And also, why? Like, you could sit and like do other things. Like I said, sit back like Charlie and smoke some cigarettes or whatever and enjoy yourself. But in all seriousness, the edge, like you said, is not in even this thing that we're talking about here with making sure that you have live teams. That's like table stakes. We're trying to give you something that can help like really take it to the next level. And I really do think kind of the combination of these things is awesome. I'm excited to utilize it here for this particular playoff best ball season. We will be back to talk some more about it. Maybe we'll even get a hop in some drafts, see if we can put it to use a little bit.
For sure.
In real time. I'm sure that won't be a shit show at all. Trying to stream drafts with the draft hacker and your dynamic rankings. I can't imagine how that could ever go south. But I'm really excited to dive into it. I've done a handful of playoff best ball drafts, and it's been I'm enjoying it.
The other
It's
thing
God's game. Go ahead.
Well, the other thing I just want to say, like with the tools that we're talking about, like they're guiding you, and like I can tell you from firsthand experience that it's still really, really fun because
Yes.
it's not you're getting guidance on what makes sense given what you already did, but what makes sense is not Rashee Rice. It's a many different paths that you can still take, but there are paths that are basically closed, and
Yeah.
so that is what the tools are going to be helping you with, not just kind of when I take this guy, now I take this guy, now I take this guy. It's actually, to me, it makes the whole experience way more fun because it's helping me understand just like where I am. It's like having a map.
That I'm stealing that, by the way, that it's telling you what options are closed. Because sometimes I struggle with defining our tools, especially like the draft hacker, because we've added so many options that even I can't recite them all. There's like there's like 100 different things you can show on your screen at any given time while you're drafting. Not quite as many for playoff best ball, but still. And so trying to describe to a casual person or someone that's never used it before can be a little daunting. It can be a lot. It's a new thing and a new technology, but really that's exactly what it's doing. We're not telling you who to pick. We're not saying you have to pick this person, right? You took Tyreek in the first round. You have to do this in the second round. What it's doing is actually the opposite. As Pat said, it's here's the roads that are closed.
Mm-hmm.
You can take these other 4 paths. There's still 4 other roads open available to you. You pick. We don't give a shit. Like we can have.
No one's going to yell at you either. You're just gonna. It's just gonna be like, all right, here's now it's closed.
Exactly. We might have rankings that we would say we might pick, in a vacuum, but also like it's up to you. You're building a portfolio and all that. What we're trying to do is just tell you, right, that like we're going to put the bumpers on your bowling. We're going to put the bumpers on. We're going to make this we're not going to be able to bowl a strike for you. And you can throw a curve. You can throw it straight. You can throw it off the bumper for all I care. Yeah, go have fun. Go drink a beer and go have fun bowling. But we're going to put those bumpers on, and it just makes it, like you said, it makes it so easy. And it also, a lot of the times, opens my eyes to things that I never.
It lets you think about the stuff that's more fun to think about because you're not like having to calculate out. And yeah, so you guys built sims that actually calculate out like how likely is San Francisco to play Detroit in the conference championship game, which is what's powering some of the dynamic ranking stuff that we're doing because we need to be able to know that, right? If you're boosting people up. How often should
you take the Lions with the Niners? Like
it's
possible you should never do it because it's 1% or whatever for them to play, but also it could be 30%. And when you take Debo in the first round, you should be prioritizing Amon-Ra, and the human brain cannot possibly calculate all that right in real time. So we're helping you do that.
How should you be taking the Packers with the 49ers? No, because the Packers are likely to be a 6 or 7 seed. And so they're going to get in, and the only way they would, if they get in, they're going to be 6 or 7 probably. And if they are the 6, then they need the 7 to upset the 1 so that they don't go play the 1. That's unlikely. So they're very likely to go play the 1, which means they're going to get knocked out before the conference championship game, or the 49ers are, and that's bad if you're drafting them together. So you're going to, so like that's the type of stuff where now, do you like never want to do that? I probably yeah, you never want to do it. But there's some stuff where like maybe you want to mix in some, and but so it's not like saying you have to do this, but like I don't want to calculate who while I'm drafting. Like I don't want to be calculating out like, oh wait, they're the 6. Does that mean should I draft the Eagles or shit? I missed my pick. Exactly. Like I want to be thinking through like the fun player level stuff, the teams that I'm building. And so anyway, the tools, we did it at the end, but I think we did a good job promoting the tools. I think the tools genuinely make the game way more fun.
I think so too. It's the kind of final cherry on top is that it's of course, ultimately we want to enjoy this whole experience. Of course we want to make money, but like if it's completely miserable to do it, or the tools are making it worse on you, who cares? I really genuinely do. Like I enjoy pulling up the tools and drafting teams. I also learn things every single time. Like literally I did like 700 something drafts this summer. for best ball. I definitely did not do all of them using the draft hacker. I'm also an adult human being. I can't sit at my desk and draft 1,000 teams over the course of the summer, but every single time I did, I would find something and learn something. And then I felt like it grew my best ball game every single time, to see different combinations and different, things that would strategically make more sense on a given team, that if I was just drafting on my phone, sitting upstairs, laying on the couch, I would never have seen. And that's absolutely the case for playoff best ball. And it's probably even more powerful for playoff best ball.
I think it is.
So,
because the mistakes are magnified.
Yes, 100%. Yeah. Exactly. You almost can't make a mistake in a too big of a mistake.
You
in
can
regular
salvage
season best ball.
You can't salvage a lot of the mistakes that you make in playoff best ball.
You screw up in playoff best ball, that team's done. It's over.
It's done.
So that's why this stuff is so important. We will, of course, as I mentioned, be back at some point in the near future. We'll see what kind of scheduling makes sense. We appreciate you guys, and hopefully you enjoyed. I enjoyed. It was a fun conversation. I believe we said go Ravens, go George Kittle, go JSN, and
go Sam Howell. I'm on board.
And let's perfect outro. Go Sam Howell. See you guys next time. Peace.
Woo! Those were some spicy takes. Want to stay up to date with all of the other spicy takes we're going to have over here at Spike Week? Why don't you press that subscribe button below? You turn notifications on, we draft a team, boom, you know about it. We have another spicy take, boom, you know about it. You can be there. You can draft with us. You want to stay up to date? That's how you do it. All right, we'll catch you later next time here at Spike Week.